What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Wise Stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I am joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG, who y'all know as Paulie D. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie8Ds. Paulie, what's happening, bro? Ain't shit. Another day, another dollar. Or multiple dollars because we have multiple sports and it's just glorious. It's been fun, man. I know you've had a good time. I don't think you've had a losing MLB slate yet, which is awesome. And in basketball, it's like we've been doing these breakdowns, obviously, Monday through Friday or during the week, I should say. But when you look at the winning lineup, it's like a lot of the guys that we discussed and things went a lot of the way we discussed. It's just a matter of like anything in NBA because the field is sharper. You could say you really have to be perfect and just having the right combinations of things, right? Like. You get those nut plays or whatever, but you need those nut plays with the other nut plays. You know what I'm saying? It's like you just need them together.
I'm like a little torn on NBA. Like I truly believe it's like an MME sport. But like the main difference between what I'm doing in baseball and basketball is like baseball, I build like three main teams in like a $40 to $50 kind of contest, and then donkey it. And then maybe I'll do like 10 teams in one of the donkeys as well. Basketball, I'm just doing like 20 or 40 teams. And like, we've been on the right stuff, but I just don't find I haven't had a team find the right combinations yet. And maybe it's I need more teams. I should lower the contest entry fee and get more. Or do I start playing some of the, like similar to baseball, some of the higher dollar? But it's like, baseball, like, if you catch the right stack, it's not chalk. Like you can run away in a contest like that. In basketball, the ownership is like the field is so sharp. The right plays are usually like kind of everyone knows them. You might not separate as much in those contests. I'm like debating how to approach it, and I haven't decided yet. But I'm thinking it's more teams, less dollars in MME, so that when I do have the right guys, I have enough teams to get them into the right combos. But the field is sharp. You know what I mean? Like even like Troy Brown was like 40%. Like guys that I thought we were ahead of the curve on, and it's just because the slates are small too. Like they're all like 5 through 7 games. There's just not a ton to choose from. And I think, we're going to have that kind of saturation of ownership a lot of the times because we're not going to have many 10, 11 game slates. I don't think any.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's only going to get more concentrated as we get into the playoffs, which starts in just a couple weeks. I think you hit it on the head. Not just with NBA, but I think with any sport, there's really there's really two ways you want to go. Either you're building teams by hand because you're not an optimizer guy, and you should, if that's the case, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't play the donkey. Yeah, throw your teams in a low dollar donkey just in case you fucking hit the nuts. But really, if you are going to be doing that, not so much the high dollar for everyone else or for a player like yourself who's experienced and all that kind of stuff, sure. But for the rest of the people, even if you're new, if you're building teams by hand, you should be playing in smaller fields, right? Like maybe you can only afford to do $5 a team, but if you can only do 3 teams, you should find those contests that have a few hundred people in it and start to build your confidence up. And because like Paulie said, the field is just so sharp. And again, at the end of the day, if you play the donkey, min cashing may not be enough. Like the payouts in a lot of these tournaments are so top heavy that if you don't get near a top 5 finish, you're really not going to profit much in the long run because of all the losing days you have in between taking chances like you should be doing in tournaments. So I think you hit it right on the head as far as whatever you're comfortable with. I know you and I, before the break, we were heavy into MME, but there is definitely an art, a skill. I mean, if you look at any of the quote unquote pros or whatever you want to call them, screenshots across the industry, you always see one of two things. Either he won $100,000. Either he was in a contest that cost $1,600 to get in, and there was only a few hundred people in it, or the dude had 500 fucking teams and managed to sneak one up to the donkey. And that's just the reality of the situation. So if you're out there building 3 teams and all you're doing is throwing them in donkeys, just 3 teams and a donkey, it's fine. I'm not saying you can't do it, but if you're taking this seriously, you're not going to profit over the long run. And if you do, it's going to be pennies.
Yep. Agreed.
So, hit it right in the head, Paul. Appreciate those of you who are up doing the early grind with us. We decided to make sure we did the show nice and early so that we get the FanDuel slate going. They obviously have the 1:30 game, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. So we appreciate you guys grinding with us. The rest of you guys who are joining us later on because you play DraftKings and this was just too early for you, welcome as well. But do me a favor either way and hit that like button. Likes really go a long way, really help us out, allow us to continue to do free content, allow us to continue to do that dirty to that YouTube, to that Twitch. So if you'd like us to continue, we ask you to show a little love and hit that like button and subscribe with notifications bell so you're notified whenever we go live. I see one thing that like, listen, we're not the biggest company out there. We don't have the most views because we don't have a ton of money to dump into marketing like some of these other places. But the people that we do have just really, really embrace the culture. They really embrace the WiseTake Nation. I remember when you no other chat where you look in the chat and see people like Elliot saying Warren did the dirty. Like nowhere else will you see, the community embrace the lingo. We're like our own little country. It's like we talk about community. We're our own little nation. And that is why we are the WiseTake Nation. With that said, Paulie, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Definitely curious to hear your thoughts. For those of you who subscribe to WiseTake.com, Paulie D wrote his article nice and early. He wrote it the night before just to make sure the nation had it up. We'll do our best to update that throughout the day as we get news. But he writes a core plays article for us every day. So if you're subscribed to WiseTake.com, hopefully you're checking that out in addition to the cheat sheets, the projections, all the dirty content to do that dirty. Tools to help you do that dirty. All right. First game, Paulie, we got the Toronto Raptors visiting the Miami Heat. FanDuel only. We have a 221 total. Toronto currently 3.5-point favorites. We'll talk about Toronto first. What you got?
Yeah. Overall, this is a slower kind of game. Not looking to get a ton. I love Pascal Siakam always, and Miami really doesn't have a ton of size. You're going to see like Jay Crowder and like maybe some Kelly Olynyk guarding him most of the time, or if they put Bam on him, he's got a significant like athletic advantage over him. So, just really like Siakam, especially underneath 9K, which he is on both sites. And then, I think this is a really good Fred VanVleet spot. He's going to have like Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson guarding him, and he's just more athletic and stronger than both those guys. And Miami was one of the higher turnover teams before the restart, so he could have a steal upside game here. OG, Kyle Lowry, they're fine, but I think there's just better pieces on the slate, so it's mostly just Siakam and VanVleet that I'm really interested in at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree. One edge, I mean, you and I during the season, we've always been kind of big, especially in the NBA specifically, of like trying to get some of the later games. There's an East Coast bias, not just that. There's an impatience among a lot of DFS players, a lot of gamblers in general. They want action now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see increased ownership on this game, even though it's not projected to be one of the better games on the slate because of the pace, because these are two teams that emphasize defense. So I'm with you. There wasn't a ton that I was overly interested in on either side, but on the Toronto side, like guys like Fred VanVleet, guys who are priced appropriately, I think are more where I'm looking. Kyle Lowry, I think had a really big game recently. I'm fine with taking shots on some of these guys, but because a lot of those games are later, I mean, we've got that Memphis New Orleans game that just looks awesome. We've got a lot of interesting games that look a little bit better than this one. So I'm with you. I'm not like overly excited, especially on the Toronto side. But I will admit that some of these Toronto guys, considering how FanDuel does their pricing, some of the prices are appealing, as our boy Stevie Brown would say. Like VanVleet at 6'6", even Siakam is only 8K. That's a guy that has phenomenal upside. I just am worried about the matchup also, kind of like you said. So it's mainly VanVleet for me. Norman Powell's usage rate is just awesome, but he's just like Terrence Ross right now. It's just all scoring. So if he has a bad shooting night, he will literally get you a 5. But if he has a good shooting night, he's got the upside. But none of these are guys that like I would consider core plays. These are all guys that I would grab a little exposure to, kind of shift throughout, try to pick off the right ones, and kind of move on. With that said, Paulie, I'm gonna kick it over to you again. This time for the Miami side, your hometown team, bro.
Yep. There's not a ton I'm interested in. Like initially, there was talks that Jimmy Butler may have like left and had to get quarantined. Then I was gonna like a ton. I think Duncan Robinson is a guy, if this was DraftKings that I'd be looking at because of the 3-point upside. On FanDuel, I just don't think you need to do that. And there's a lot of guys at his position I'm more interested in. Same kind of goes for Nunn. If you're building a lot of teams, I don't mind throwing in a player or two on Dragic or Jay Crowder. And like same kind of goes to Jimmy Butler. The only guy that I'm really like into is Bam, and it's a small sample size, but through 2 games, he's like top 5 in usage, double machine, and just a skilled, awesome talent that just seems to be getting better and better. Similar to Siakam, just maybe not quite as good. But as a whole, I'm just not that into anything on Miami. You want to take some shots on Tyler Hero as a value play, I'm cool with that as well. But I think that again would be more of a DraftKings play where it'd be like 3-1 instead of 3-5, 3-6.
Yeah, and
So it's like light exposure if you're building a lot, but Bam's really the only guy that I would make an effort to get into a
yeah,
lineup.
I completely agree. And like even from a matchup perspective with Gasol back, I prefer Butler in terms of matchup. The problem is on FanDuel specifically, Butler's position is more crowded. I think you could make an argument for Bam simply for the position, the way the position's way out. But you got guys like Jordan Clarkson, we're going to talk about. We've got like forget about the higher owned guys like Clarkson. We have lower owned guys that are interesting, like even a guy like Dylan Brooks, who I know the name may make people cringe, but he's in a phenomenal pace up spot, and he's been taking a ton of shots. That's just something he always does. So I'm with you on that. Butler is the one that I think matchup wise I could see more. I could see having more success. I think he represents more of a matchup issue. You got OG, you could stick on him. Guys like this that Butler I think can handle. But Bam is the one when it comes to actually roster construction, especially on FanDuel where you don't have the utility, you don't have that position flexibility. I think that Bam comes in handy a little bit more there. But with that said, I agree with Paulie in that this is not the game that I just want to go ham with. Jay Crowder is interesting if he starts at the 4 again. Keep in mind that if he does start at the 4, he'll probably be seeing a lot of Siakam, which foul trouble, whatever the case may be. Maybe he emphasizes defense a little bit more. But his price is low on FanDuel, and he comes at a small forward position that we like to punt anyway. Kendrick Nunn's extremely cheap. His minutes have been a little inconsistent, especially lately. Right before the break, his minutes were inconsistent, and it looks like they're resuming right where they left off there. Dragic is the one that on a night in, night out basis typically has more upside. One guy that I'll say, like, this would be something I would really only do on DraftKings, but Kelly Olynyk, I know he looked really good in camp. They talked him up huge, and he looked really good in that last game. So, again, to punt with him at center, a guy that doesn't even start at a position where we have so much ceiling everywhere else, like it's difficult to really go there. But like Paulie said, it's just for the MME people. If you have 150 teams, you want to get a little different on some, you can give it a shot. But it's really Bam and Butler for me. And again, neither of which I'm going too heavy on. I'd rather load up on some of these later games, which we're about to get into right now. Next up, I gotta flip the script right quick. We've got the Indiana Pacers going up against the Washington Wizards. Just pull this shit up. We've got a 227.5 total, and we've got the Pacers currently 8-point favorites. As this loads up, there we go. Paulie, I'm going to kick it back to you. Talk to me about the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah, so I don't think we have official word yet on Sabon. I mean, on Brogdon and Oladipo, but it looks like they're both going to miss again. Making Aaron Holiday a phenomenal play. Like, he kind of got overshadowed by TJ Warren, but he went for like 35 plus DraftKings points, and Oladipo played most of that game. So, he had like 10 assists, 5 rebounds, 15 points. One of my favorite plays on the whole slate at his price on both sites. Obviously TJ Warren went bananas, shot extremely well. Gonna get the volume, gonna get the usage again. They increased his price, but probably not enough for what his role is gonna be here. I'll have some. I'm actually curious to see what projections say about his ownership. But I think if like the field is just gonna go to TJ Warren, like I'm interested in playing some of the other pieces like Justin Holiday, Miles Turner, and really, really like Aaron Holiday, probably one of my highest owned players. And even in a short stint, TJ McConnell went for like 26, 27, and he should see a major minute increase if Oladipo misses. I think Oladipo is like considered doubtful, and Brogdon is considered extremely questionable. That's the last that I
I'm
had
pretty sure
seen.
Depot's out because a back-to-back issue or something like that. It's just something. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he's like basically out.
Yeah, yeah, for
Rest, yeah,
rest.
rest.
Looking at ownership, actually, they got Miles Turner projected as the highest owned player, and TJ Warren is really, really low. I don't even see him. Here he is, 4%. I can't honestly. It's just that can't be right. But you know, definitely want pieces of this game. It's my second favorite game on the slate. So love Aaron Holiday to death. I'll probably have like 50, 60, 70% of him. I'll probably grab like 30 to 40 of Warren, 25 of Turner, and like 20 to 25 of Justin Holiday and TJ McConnell. I think you could have up to 4 of those guys on the same team. If you do that, I'd want to run back somebody from Washington. But this and the New Orleans game, my two favorites on the slate. And like a lot of shit here on Indiana.
Yeah, I'm with you, man, 100%. We know Washington plays no defense, so it's a lot easier to look at the Indiana side and just think about some of these matchups. You mentioned TJ Warren. I think on FanDuel he'll be a lot more popular at 6'7". I think on DraftKings the reason some ownership projections might have him lower is because he's 7'4". So I think that the price may make people uneasy. But I do agree with you. People saw what he did in that last game, and that was with Depot. So I think that as we get news confirming, I did just double check. Depot's out because they have a game on Tuesday, so they have a back to back. Not that they played yesterday, but they have a game tomorrow, and that's the reason Oladipo's out. So we anticipate Oladipo to play tomorrow. So I'm with you, man. Again, on FanDuel, I do expect his ownership to be a little higher, where he's 6'7". I'm fine with taking shots on TJ Warren, but I do agree with you, Paulie. I think if we get confirmation of Brogdon being out, who is truly questionable with a neck injury, and if people realize more and more people realize that Oladipo's out, it's still very early for people to be looking at a 4 o'clock slate. People who have lives on a Monday. So I do think that'll change, and I also think that I also am interested in some of the other pieces. You mentioned Aaron Holiday. I think it's a phenomenal value play on both sites. I already have my FanDuel teams built, at least preliminarily, while the slate starts, and I have a lot of Holiday. Miles Turner, like you said, very interesting. He fouled out against Embiid, so I think some people might be, he sucked. It's Embiid. Embiid went ham that game too. He won like 80 fantasy points or something like that. He fouled out in 20 minutes, but if you factor him in, and I also think that's another reason TJ Warren did what he did, because Turner only played 20 minutes, and think about who the backups are. It's guys that are not going to be aggressive whatsoever. So it was just the TJ Warren show, and he happened to be really efficient. So I'm with you, man. I think that Miles Turner is very interesting. Center's tough to go too heavy on one player because it's just kind of loaded. But Aaron Holiday for sure looks like an awesome value play. I don't mind pivoting to TJ McConnell as like a hedge in some teams, especially for MMEing. You have like 50, 60% Holiday. Why not grab 10% of McConnell? Because if one of those guys, if Holiday does suck or he gets in foul trouble or whatever the case is, then that means that McConnell must have went ham. And then like the other value guy, what is it? It's Justin Holiday. All the Holiday brothers in good spots today. I agree with you, man. Especially if we get word that Brogdon's out. With Depot being out, that means a lot of minutes for him. He's not a high-usage player, but you don't really need that because he's extremely cheap on both sites. So I'm 100% with you. If in the off chance Brogdon does play, it's a phenomenal matchup, and his price is really soft. I'm a little worried that he hasn't played since before the break. That makes me a little uneasy because he's obviously got a neck injury, so I'm worried about limitations. I think that would obviously lower the ownership of Aaron Holiday, but I would still be interested in Aaron Holiday because, like I said, I would expect Brogdon, who's been dealing with a neck injury, to be kind of eased back into action. Seeing as how he's already hurt, and he's got a history. I mean, this whole year he's been hurt. He's constantly getting every other week. It's like small things. He comes back quick, but then he's out again like a week later. So again, it's a really good spot for a point guard. We're talking about Ish Smith and Shabazz Napier, and again, if Brogdon were to play, he is significantly bigger than those guys. I can tell you that right. Brogdon was a 3 in college. You know what I'm saying? He was turned into a point guard on a team, in Milwaukee with like Giannis and all these other players. But he's not like some thin, frail guy. But I'm just hoping he's out and we can load up on Aaron Holiday. But even if he's in, I'm still probably going to play at least some Holiday. All right, let's go to the other side of this. We got the Washington side, Paulie. No Bradley Beal, no John Wall. You called John Brown out the one game. He got into foul trouble and kind of busted, and the next day just went fucking nuts. And that's exactly what you said was going to happen, as long as he stays out of fucking foul trouble. So talk to me about Washington.
Yeah. So, there's they're missing so much, and there's just so much usage to go around. These guys are just still underpriced. You got to play Troy Brown. You got to play some Thomas Bryant, although his price has increased. I think actually I'm ready to pivot to Rui Hachimura off of Thomas Bryant and go that route. But those three guys, I think you just grab like between 30 to 40% of across the board. Ish Smith has been just doing it every day. I'm cool with him. Shabazz Napier's price feels a little high, but he's really shot poorly, and when that variance goes the other way, he's capable of putting up 35 40s. That's probably it. They're really only playing about 7 or 8 guys consistent minutes, and we know who they are. Troy Brown, Rui, Thomas Bryant, a little bit of Ish, a little bit of Shabazz. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm again. Once again, I do agree. I'm cool with Bryant. I do like Bryant, but I do like the idea of turning a little bit more. I think because Thomas Bryant just went out there and balled in his last game, I expect people to kind of be on that train. They saw what Embiid did to this team. Keep in mind, not that Embiid wouldn't do it to Turner, but Embiid got Turner in foul trouble. Again, only 20 minutes for Turner and no Sabonis. So that really opened things up for Embiid. I think if Turner stays out of foul trouble, he is a guy that could block some shots and make things a little bit more difficult, especially because Thomas Bryant is not that big, right? It's a big difference between Embiid and Thomas Bryant in terms of size, strength, all that stuff. So I'm with you. As much as I like Thomas Bryant, I just feel like it's not right. And Hachimura's price has really come down, especially on DraftKings at 5,800. He was just in the sevens. His last game was terrible against Brooklyn. I'm kind of puzzled by that. He played 32 minutes. He had a 14.3% usage rate. Not really sure why. When they played Phoenix, he had a 29% usage rate. He wasn't the most efficient, but I mean, I just think at some point he is like you had said about Troy Brown. This is not. They don't expect to make the playoffs. They're missing two of their best players, and they're probably the third best scorer in Bertans. They're just looking to play their young guys and help and use this as an opportunity to develop them for next season. And I do expect Hachimura to kind of have one of those eruption games, especially if TJ Warren's the one playing the four, man. One thing we know about TJ Warren is he does not play defense. He cannot play no defense. So curious to see what they do. I meant 4. I don't know if I said 3. But on DraftKings especially, that price is really low for Hachimura. You mentioned Shabazz Napier. If Brogdon is out, Aaron Holiday is a much easier matchup for any point guard than Malcolm Brogdon. I know Shabazz hasn't really had the greatest of games and his minutes have been inconsistent, but assuming that he continues to start, Ish Smith has been outplaying him, so just keep an eye, make sure he starts. Shabazz's fucking usage rate has looked awesome. He's just been super inefficient. 27.3% in the first game against Phoenix. He shot 4 for 13. And then against Brooklyn, he only put up a 10 in 25 minutes, 23.1% usage. He was 2 for 9 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. So he's taken 11 threes and made 2. He's going to have that game where the shots just start to fall, and he's going to have massive upside. So not like a core play by any means, but certainly a guy you want to get some exposure to on a smaller slate because the upside is there. It's just a matter of him being efficient enough to capitalize. If he doesn't do it, you get the feeling Ish will. Assuming Brogdon is out, one of these point guards is going to do some dirties. And I'm cool with going back to Troy Brown because I think that usage, as long as he stays out of foul trouble, is here to stay. There's a possibility that he gets put on TJ Warren, who's been hyper-aggressive. But either way, man, you just got to follow the minutes. You got to follow the volume and understand what the team strategy is. They're trying to play their young guys. So I'm with you on that. I think that's it. We're going to go on to this next game here. We've got the Denver Nuggets visiting the Oklahoma City Thunder. We've got a 220.5 total. OKC opened up -5. They're up to -6.5. Nation, those of you in the chat, I will be going back to recap and we'll be answering some questions, so just hang out with us. I know I haven't looked at the chat just yet, but bear with us. We will answer the questions. Paulie, talk to me about Denver.
Yeah, so first off, these are two very slow teams. I think they've each played 2 games. They're the slowest and second to the third to last slowest teams out there. Denver missing quite a bit of pieces and going pretty large out there. So Monty Morris, the only real facilitator, ball handler that they got. He missed all their scrimmages and practices, so he's a little bit rusty. I think he got in a little foul trouble. But overall, this is a good player. Really like his price on FanDuel, and DraftKings at 5K is worth a little bit of exposure. Torrey Craig, it was nice getting him at min price or whatever we got him the other day. Now his price is more reasonable. He's all right. I think there's better plays on the slate. Michael Porter Jr., one of my favorite plays on the slate. I'm going to get a lot of that. And Paul Millsap, I like quite a bit as well. Um, Probably get like between 30 and 50% of both of those, Porter and Millsap. Jokic is all right. I like other people at his position. And with all the bigs out there, I think it's eating into some of like his rebound and like, block peripherals. And I don't know, like, I think his ceiling games are going to be fewer and farther between. Um, yeah. So Porter, Millsap, the two I like the most. I don't think there's anything you need to do off their bench. Like, if you're building a lot, a Mason Plumlee share, but it's Monty Morris, Porter, and Millsap that I'm most exposed to.
Yep. Yeah. Obviously, the Jamal Murray news is something we're all going to be waiting for here. If Murray plays, he is 5'8" on FanDuel, which is really low. Somewhat of a tough matchup against a guy like Chris Paul. Not that he's the same Chris Paul as he used to be, but he is competent. He's got a decent basketball IQ, and those guys in general can make things a little more difficult. And plus, they have guys they could put on him if need be, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, some younger dudes. If he gets Schroeder, all bets are off. So I don't expect to see Schroeder on him all that much. But you'd mention if he gets ruled out, Monte Morris is even cheaper than Holiday on FanDuel at $4K. And makes for a phenomenal play. But all that stuff aside, either way, I'm with you on Michael Porter Jr., man. The guy's an athletic freak. I'm going to play this dude. As long as he's relatively cheap, I'm going to play him pretty much every day. Because at least in some form, it's just a matter of how much. Because the guy is just a freak. He's definitely got a low floor. He's young. He's a little reckless. Gets into foul trouble from time to time. Sometimes his shot is just horrible. But, I mean, every time this dude jumps, his head is above the rim. It's just insane. He's a super athlete. I'm okay with getting some Jokic just for the sake that I think he's going to be low owned, but nothing I want to hang my head on. I'm okay with some Millsap because I think the price is fair. Like you said, this is not the most attractive game on the slate. We got two slower paced teams, two of the better defensive teams in general. So that's basically it. But Michael Porter Jr. is one play that I do like quite a bit. Let's go over to the Oklahoma City side of this game. Paulie, talk to me.
Yeah, there's actually a couple plays I like on OKC. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think his price is egregious on DraftKings, 6K. You got to play that, against a team that's not going to guard guards very well. Danilo Gallinari, against his former team, they blew out. I forget who they played their first game. Like, I think in close games, he's going to get a lot of the shots down the stretch, and I'm expecting this to be a close game. So I like him too at a very cheap price. Steven Adams has great history against Jokic. He's all right. Center's got a couple options today that we're interested in that get like 10-15% of him. I also think if you're building multiples, like Nerlens Noel is worth a look today. I think they're going to need his size. There's a chance Adams gets into foul trouble. And Denver just plays very, very big right now. So I think you could see a couple increased minutes, and he's a big point per minute guy. So I like Nerlens Noel to kind of get a little different, where like you have a very chalky team and then like Noel and, two kind of contrarian pivots. And then I also like Schroeder, obviously not for defense, but, his usage was high, just hasn't shot well yet. That'll turn around. And no one's going to be on Dennis Schroeder. He can go for 40. He did it plenty of times this season. They don't really have a ton of scoring options besides Gallo and Alexander. And Alexander does most of his in transition. And Chris Paul will facilitate and shoot when he has to. But I do like a couple OKC guys. Alexander because he's too cheap and he's a really good player. Gallo, more so in like game stacks because I think if the game kind of gets out of hand, then they will take him out early. Steven Adams or Noel, and if you want to add Chris Paul to that, that's fine too. But Schroeder, Gilgeous, Gallo, and I guess Noel are the guys I'm most interested in.
Yep, no, I'm with you. Again, the game itself isn't crazy, isn't too appealing, if you will. But the pricing on a lot of these guys are. Very tempting, especially like Gallo, who's 5'9" on FanDuel, 5'6" on DraftKings, and Gallo's capable of a double-double. He's a big dude, and a lot of times he plays the 4. He could fall into it. You mentioned Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 6K on DraftKings just seems strange for a guy that during the regular season was playing like 40 minutes a game. I understand it's Denver. And on FanDuel, it's a little tougher to play him. He's 7-1, but not just that. It's again the position on FanDuel, shooting guard position, is somewhat deep for the size of the slate. We talked about Van Fleet, we talked about Butler, we've got Jordan Clarkson, who I've mentioned several times. We've got a lot. There's a few people that are worth considering over there, and that's going to mean that his ownership should be extremely low. So again, working him in tournaments. And then, I really like the Steven Adams call because center is deep. We talked about Miles Turner, Thomas Bryant. People are going to be playing both of those guys. We talked about Jokic, who's coming up. We've got Embiid on the slate, who just went nuts in his last game. So I think a lot of people will kind of overlook him. And if you are playing a guy like Adams at center, he's one of the few, like 5'4" on DraftKings. I do think it's going to help you get somewhat of a different build. And like you said, man, he's done really well against Denver in 2 of the games he's played him in this year. He's just done well against Jokic. Jokic lost weight. That's not going to help you when you're playing a guy like Adams. You're trying to defend a guy like Adams. Losing weight is not going to help you. It'll help him in every other facet of his game, not his defense. So I think that's an interesting call. I saw some people in the chat asking about Adams, and I agree with you, man. Again, it's hard to core up a guy at that position because it's just a loaded position, but certainly a guy I want to work and get some exposure to that I think will be really low owned today for me plays. And only those of you who have been with the nation for that long know what we're referring to when we say that. Let's move it over to in my opinion, the game of the night. The Memphis Grizzlies visiting the New Orleans Pelicans. We've got a 236 total, though it has come down 2.5 points from 238.5. The Pelicans open up -3. They are up to -4.5. Paulie, we're going to start with the Memphis side because they're technically the road team. What do you got here?
Yeah, Memphis is going to be tricky all year long. It's like, which big do we go to? Who's going to have the good game? I don't know. Hard to tell. But John Morant's been playing awesome. He's going to continue to have that Luka Doncic-esque kind of role. And until his price gets up over like 8.85, you just got to keep playing him. Probably a little bit better play on DraftKings because of the triple-double, double-double bonuses, but, fine on either. And then, they're just kind of making you have to get some exposure to Brandon Clark, at least on DraftKings at 4-1 or 4-2. Just way too cheap. New Orleans plays very fast. They don't have much size. Brandon Clark dudded in the game where he had the size advantage, blew up in the game where he was, in a tougher matchup. It's just going to be like that this year. Which one? Is it Clark? Is it Jackson? Is it Joval? I prefer Joval and Brandon Clark today if I had to choose. And, give me some John Morant with that. That's about the extent of what I'm looking for with Memphis.
Yeah, it's funny that there's always those 3 guys that I like to play on Memphis. I just really don't like to play them together. Not to say you never can, but in the long run, it just seems like one of those 3 guys, Jaren Jackson, Brandon Clark, or Joval. If you're lucky, 2, but it seems like those guys are heavily like I don't know, what's the opposite of correlated? Like uncorrelated, incorrelated? They just don't seem to correlate as well. It seems like one guy steps it up and does dirties, and the other one either got in foul trouble or didn't get in minutes because the other guy didn't get in foul trouble. So I'm with you. This is a spot where bigs excel. So I am interested in those 3. It's just a matter of which ones. I usually set a rule. If I use any kind of optimizer, I'll set a rule not to play them together, or at least not in a certain amount of lineups. Picking them is tough. Jaren Jackson is going to be your first choice because he's intended to be that guy, but he's got a serious foul trouble issue. Zion Williamson has been limited. He hasn't been playing a lot of minutes. The more minutes he plays, you have to figure is not good for a guy like Jaren Jackson. Whenever there's an aggressive player that Jaren Jackson is covering, usually foul trouble is kind of lurking. So I'm with you. I think it's more of a Brandon Clark day personally, and he's really cheap on DraftKings at 4,200. And if not, Joval, the only reason Joval is tougher, number one, his price is up, at least on DraftKings at 7.9. The price isn't so bad on FanDuel at 7. But it just comes down to it being a super loaded position. And again, the game plan, right? Like, they don't have to play Joval 30 minutes. They could very well just as easily play Clark or Jaren Jackson at the 5 and be content with that if things aren't going, especially because New Orleans isn't known as a super big team. So I'm cool with all 3 of them. I would probably rank them Clark, then Jackson, then Joval, but I do think I want exposure at least a little bit to all three separately. John Morant's been playing awesome. His minutes have been way up. I don't know, his price seems too low on both sides for what he's doing. I do like John Morant. If listen, I think that I actually do somewhat respect Lonzo Ball's defense because I think Lonzo Ball's athletic enough to, even if he gets a little beat on a certain point, he's got ups. He's got enough athleticism to recover. And then Drew Holiday, we know, is actually a good perimeter defender. So there are some concerns there. Another interesting player is Dylan Brooks, similar to the Rosses and all those guys. He just doesn't do a lot peripherally, but he's cheap and he's taking a lot of shots. The usage isn't a problem. It's just an efficiency issue. So if he's going to get more opportunities, maybe he does a little bit of dirty himself. But it's mainly those bigs, those three bigs, and then John Morant that I have my eye on here. And it's just a matter of figuring out which one. The New Orleans side should be a little bit easier to decipher in terms of plays that we want, but the Memphis side shouldn't be ignored because they're in a phenomenal spot, and a lot of these guys project well. With that said, Paulie, talk to me about New Orleans.
Yeah, so I love the New Orleans side. Memphis plays very fast, turns the ball over, doesn't defend very well, and it's Lonzo, Drew, and Brandon Ingram, right? Zion, they're just going to keep the training wheels on. I don't know for how much longer since they've lost their first two games, and they're like 3.5 out of that 8 seed and falling fast. But until they, are going to play in 25 minutes or more, it's just hard to really get interested in him or like make a play on Derek Favors. You just got to go with the three guys that are going to take shots. Lonzo Ball has shown us 50, 60, triple-double upside. He hasn't played well yet. I think he blows up this game. He's one of my favorite sneaky contrarian plays on the slate. You can pretty much say the same thing for Drew Holiday. I just think he's a little more expensive and doesn't have as much of the peripheral upside as Lonzo Ball. Like Lonzo Ball could have 5 steals today, 10 assists, 10 rebounds. And then Brandon Ingram is their go-to guy, especially if Zion's not going to get a ton of minutes. So I think I would try to get one or two of them into most lineups. If you want to take a shot on somebody on their bench, like Josh Hart is very cheap. I could see him excelling in this kind of environment with the turnovers and three-point shooting. But Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and some Drew Holiday.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on a lot of that, man. I'll start with Ingram. So I'll start with Ingram because, like you said, as long as Williamson is limited, and I don't see why he wouldn't be, because he has been. He's their he's supposed to be their version of the LeBron James, the new era, whatever. So I don't see why you would rush a player like that if you're a little unsure, especially when you have other guys that are capable, guys like Brandon Ingram. We've seen ever since Zion actually got playing time, we saw that Ingram's performance is pretty correlated with how often or if at all Williamson plays. So I do like Ingram. He's their main go-to scorer. It's an opportunity for him against Memphis where we're expecting a super fast pace between both teams. I expect more shot opportunities. I expect more rebounds, especially if Zion is limited to 20 or less minutes. As far as the guards go, Memphis has been a nut spot to attack guards with all season long. John Morant, not known for his defense. They've tried things with Melton and Dylan Brooks. Try it all you want. Memphis has still been awful at stopping guards. The question is which one? I think you can make a case for both, especially in game stacks. I do kind of like the idea of Lonzo simply because, like you said, Paulie, I just think he's going to be ridiculously low owned today. And he's got that triple-double upside. He's going to get competitive, man. Like, he's still young. He was just a rookie, last year? Now he's going up against John Morant, a lot of hype. That shit matters to guys like Lonzo Ball. You don't think his fucking dad is in his ear right now talking about you can't get outplayed by this John Morant kid. You got to show, you know what I'm saying? I just, that shit, not that I would make serious decisions based off that, but if you're telling me Lonzo Ball is going to be crazy low owned in a game that's got the highest total on the board, in a spot where point guards have just done the dirty all season long, I'm going to want at least some. I like Holiday as well. On FanDuel, Lonzo Ball is a little easier to play because Drew Holiday's at that loaded-ass shooting guard position. But the pricing on both of those guys on FanDuel, really the price of the entire New Orleans team on FanDuel is just ridiculous. Except for Zion because he's limited. But Lonzo Ball is 6'9" on FanDuel. Brandon Ingram 7'4". Drew Holiday 7'6". That just seems way too cheap for a game with the highest total on the board. Maybe that leads to some of these ownerships being elevated. But again, Holiday is at a loaded position. Lonzo Ball is at a loaded enough position where there are other players who have been playing better than him. So I'm with you, man. Ingram is probably my favorite, but I do like the New Orleans side a good amount. Some value plays to consider just to work in if you're going to take some value and you're not sure who to go with and you'd rather just at least get guys that are in good games. JJ Redick is 3,700 on DraftKings, only 4K on FanDuel. We have him projected for somewhere around 23 minutes. And if he plays efficiently, if he plays well, that could lead to a little bit more. So, I like you said, there's a lot of pieces here to consider, both from a core plays perspective and from just GPP. Let me get some because it's an awesome game. But definitely the highlight game of the night. Should be the most popular game on the night. Just a matter of, just because the game's popular doesn't mean you can't find low-owned plays within the game. You just got to think outside the box a little bit, be creative. Don't do nothing stupid. Don't do dumb shit. But, be a little creative. Play what makes sense. Think about position scarcity. All that good shit. Last game we got two more games. My bad. We got the San Antonio Spurs going up against the 76ers. We've got a 227.5 total. The Sixers opened up -6.5. They're up to -7 currently. See how. Paulie, talk to me about the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, so they've won both their games. They're breathing right down the back of Memphis for that 8 seed. Didn't expect them to really, put out that kind of effort and pursue the playoffs. I thought it was more of a rebuild, and maybe it is. They're just playing well. Bryn Forbes is kind of a key piece of news. I kind of had assumed he was out and realized he's more questionable. If he's back, Patty Mills returned last game, played a few minutes. That kind of takes away from the Murrays and Derek Whites and Lonnie Walkers. If the game's close, DeMar DeRozan's going to get almost every possession down the stretch. And, Jakob Poeltl, they're going to need to play well. Definitely foul trouble risk, but, with Embiid and Co. out there, they're going to need some size on the court. So he's a guy that should get the minutes unless he gets into foul trouble. They're all right. None of them really interest me that much. I think DeRozan is the guy that I would include in like a game stack, because if the game's close, then he's just, even if he's got 25 DraftKings points in the fourth, they'll still end up with 40 plus. And, I like Lonnie Walker still pretty cheap, but if Forbes is back, I'd kind of back off all that. So it's Poeltl and DeRozan and maybe a tad of Lonnie Walker right now.
Yeah, I agree, man. I of these two teams, San Antonio is the one that's been hemorrhaging fantasy points. So I'm okay with some of these San Antonio guys. I'll be more interested if we get the status on Bryn Forbes if he's out. But like you said, if Bryn Forbes comes in, that's a guy that's going to take away minutes from a team that the minutes are already tough to project. Derek White's been playing awesome, but at any second, like I said, if Forbes comes back, it's going to take away minutes from White and from DeJounte Murray, and whichever one's playing better is going to get the minutes. That's what Pop has done all year. Not to mention, there's going to be at least periods where they will see Ben Simmons playing the one, and things get a little more tough from a matchup perspective. When they see Shake, it's all good and gravy. When they see Simmons, it could slow things down. Simmons is a big boy. Anybody that can play the 4 and is a point guard is usually going to outsize the other guy across from them. DeMar DeRozan, like you said, crowded position on DraftKings. The price a little elevated. He's small forward only. I think we could see him at low ownership, but it's tough. Even during the season, in spots where LMA was out, we didn't see DeRozan step up as much as we would have liked. There's some other guys here who are contributing and helping. Jakob Poeltl got into foul trouble in his last game. Definitely potential for him to get in foul trouble again against Embiid. If he doesn't, just simply on price, at least on DraftKings, he becomes a decent tournament play, but I am concerned about foul trouble. I'm willing to go back to Lonnie Walker also, but again, like you said, not as heavy if Bryn Forbes is in. One interesting play I think is Rudy Gay, probably more so on FanDuel, where he's 4'7", he's 5'8" on DraftKings. His usage has looked good. Bryn Forbes affects him too, obviously. But he's somebody that with no LMA they've had to kind of rely on a little bit more. It's a little. He must be really bad. Like he must have really for Pop to be playing some of the guys over him that they play, and not just now, just all season. Like the way they've used him, he must have really fallen off. At one time, he was one of the best. He was the best player on the Kings at one time, like for a while, like for a few years. And the way he's gotten treated since coming to San Antonio, really, he's had a lot of injuries, and I guess they've taken their toll. But I'm with you, man. There's a few things I could pick off here, but there's really nothing here that I'm like, oh, I'm grabbing 60% of this guy. It's more just, I think I want a little something, but there's a lot on this slate. Even though it's not that big, there's still better plays, I think, elsewhere. And curious to hear your thoughts on Philly, man. During the season, we both realized real quick that San Antonio's defense was non-existent. Oh, as a matter of fact, we just got some news. Marco Bellinelli ruled out. Bryn Forbes ruled out. So, definitely a boost for those guys. I'll scroll back up. Definitely a boost for those guys. We were just talking about Lonnie Walkers, the guards, DeJounte Murray, Derek White. Definitely a boost for all of them. Anything to add now that we know he's ruled out?
Um, it's still like Patty Mills is back. He wasn't there the first game. It's crowded. White and DeJounte's prices are up. This is a good defensive team. I just kind of stand where I'm at. Like 20% DeRozan, 20 to 25 total, and like 10 to 15 Walker.
For sure. Paulie, talk to me about the Philadelphia side. As I mentioned, one thing we'd been on in the beginning, we realized real quick, was San Antonio plays no defense and they hemorrhage fantasy points. Who do you like from Philly?
Yeah, so I mean, how can you not like Embiid in this spot? With Podol and no one behind him to defend, and coming off a monster game, it looks like he's rested, not injured, and probably hungry to try and pursue that championship that they were the Kawhi sideline jumper away from going to last year. Him, Ben Simmons, I don't love at his price, but he's like one of those sneaky guys that if you could sneak into 15-20% of as a pivot off of some of the other studs on this slate, he's, got 60-point triple-double upside. And the Spurs so far through 2 games have played the 4th fastest pace. It's a 2-game sample. Could be a, factor of who they played. So I wouldn't, dive too much into that. But this could be a fast-paced game where he really thrives in transition. He's going to be playing some 4. He should be able to get the rebounds, like him as well. And then I did like the usage on Tobias Harris. His price is a little high, too, for my liking, but that's going to make them low-owned as well. This is kind of a sneaky game that, if the Spurs can keep it close, it could have a lot of fantasy goodness. That's just, a question of whether it will stay close or not. But it's just those 3. I like Embiid a ton. I think I'm going to get 50% of him, and then like 20% of Simmons, and like 10 to 15 of what's his face, Tobias Harris. But that's it. Not really into Shake Milton after his performance the first game. The minutes were way down. Not really into Josh Richardson and Furkan Korkmaz. You don't need those guys on this slate. It's just a big 3 for me.
Yeah, you mentioned Embiid, bro. This is just, even if LMA was playing, this is a smash spot for Embiid. Now you take LMA away, you have a way less athletic. I just forgot his name. Podol. You've got guys behind him that Pop does not want to play. He wants to play as minimally as possible. Even with Podol fouling out real early in the last game, still they were just a scramble to fill his position. So I'm with you. It's a phenomenal spot for Embiid. I expect him to be popular because of what he did last game, because it's another awesome spot. And DraftKings went ahead and they were aggressive with the pricing, as they should be. 10-3 for Embiid, 9-1 for Simmons, 8-6 for Tobias. On FanDuel, though, they once again seem underpriced. Embiid is 9-7. Ben Simmons is 8-1. Tobias Harris, who I agree with you, had over a 30% usage rate in that last game, is only 6-8. Without Horford not starting, it's really opened things up for the rest of these other 3 guys. They've gone back to how they were before Horford got there. Horford playing with the second unit makes him interesting. Mainly on FanDuel, I don't think I could pay the 7.5 for a guy that's playing around 20 to 24 minutes coming off the bench. But 5.5 is not a terrible price. Not again, just noting it. Shake Milton at 5.8 on DraftKings, not interested. At 4K on FanDuel, I would be if we didn't already have potentially Aaron Holiday. And even after that, I forgot one of these games. There's another 4K guard we were just talking about. So there's just, it's okay, but nothing special. I do think, though, to your point, Paulie, this could be a sneaky game stack. That's a high total. The Spurs are always in high total games. If they can keep this game close enough, we could see a lot of fantasy goodness. But like you said, as far as the Philly side, if I'm picking guys off just to kind of plug in, it starts with Embiid, then Tobias, and then Simmons. And those are really the main ones that I'm looking at. But again, the Spurs, we know, man, they hemorrhage fantasy points. They're just not a good defensive team whatsoever. The question is, can they score enough offensively to keep Philly pushing, to keep Philly doing dirties? Because that's the only way Embiid doesn't hit value, is if this game is a smash fest. And or assuming Embiid doesn't get hurt, is if this game is a smash fest and they just didn't need to play Embiid the big minutes. True. Last game, we got the Los Angeles Lakers and the Utah Jazz. We've got a 217 total, down from 219. Lakers opened up -6, or up to -6.5. Not the prettiest total. Late night hammer action all by itself at 9 o'clock. Paulie, talk dirty to me.
Yeah, last game of the night. Should be good, should be close. But should be kind of slow. On the Lakers side, I like LeBron. I really like Kyle Kuzma. The kid is taking the next step up in his game, kind of like Tatum did. And I'm just going to keep playing him while he's on their 6K. And then I favor LeBron over AD. AD really has not done well against Utah. I think, he'll be more popular than LeBron. So if I'm going up to a stud, I'm going to go to LeBron with Kuzma. And then I just have this gut feeling that Danny Green pops off today. He has shot terribly. There's been some stuff in the media about, Kuzma starting over him. I think he bounces back today and shoots well from three and has one of those Danny Green 30-point games, gets you like that, 7x, 8x, whatever he is. I think he's 3.9 on DraftKings. Or maybe even cheaper. It might be 3.5, just like that value play that allows you to fit in a LeBron and whoever else. And that's really it. I love Kuzma, and I like LeBron and Danny Green. I'll have like 10% Anthony Davis. And on the Utah side, I like Donnie Mitchell. I like Joe Ingles. I like Jordan Clarkson, who busted his chalk against his former team, against LeBron. And I like Rudy Gobert, who, should have a double-double on layaway and, has done well historically against the Lakers. So, I'm not too into this game outside of those guys I mentioned on the Lakers. And on the Utah side, it's Mitchell, Clarkson, Gobert, and a little bit of Joe Ingles. Did I lose you? Oh, you're muted.
Holla. I do expect Anthony Davis to be more popular. He's significantly cheaper than LeBron. And that last game against Toronto, the game just got ugly. But Anthony Davis had a usage rate of 13. I expect that to go up. He was 2 for 7 from the field. I expect him to play better. And his price is low, so I'm fine with it. I think on FanDuel it's interesting because normally you just say, oh, small forward is an ugly position. But I think today, because of the guys like Ingram and then some of the value plays you could mix in, it's actually the power forward position that pushes me more towards AT. But I do agree that this is a better overall spot for a guy like LeBron. I agree with you on Kuzma too, man. He seems to be coming up, and his price is low. His usage rate looks really good. They rely on him for scoring. What you have to ask yourself in those situations is, do they need the defense, or are they okay, or do they need the offense? If they need offense, they're going to bring in Kuzma, right? They're not relying on Green and Bradley, or not Bradley, whoever else for defense. They're relying on for offense. They rely on Kuzma for that. They bring in Danny Green and those other guys when they really look for a 3-and-D guy. And it's a guy that'll play defense and stand by the perimeter. One interesting value play, and this is just like a tournament dart, but I was impressed with how many minutes Dion Waiters played. He played like 20, and again, that game got ugly, so I think he got a little bit of extra run at the end. But we know he's a hyper-aggressive player, especially because he knows he's competing with all this time with like J.R. Smith and some of these other dudes of who's going to be that guy to run out there. So that's just a little dart. He's 3,200 on DraftKings. Even at 3,800 on FanDuel, I think there's other guys that are close enough to his price that are guaranteed to get minutes. But at 3,200 on DraftKings, he does have that upside. He don't need a lot. So
I forgot Alex Caruso too. I don't know if you were about to mention him, but he looks good. And, he's kind of like the backup point guard to LeBron, and he's even been on the court with him. And, he's just crazy cheap. I think 3,400. I personally prefer him over Waiters, but neither will I have that much of. But they're both worth getting exposure to because of their price.
I completely agree. And then on the Utah side, Clarkson's probably one of my favorite players on the slate. He didn't do so great last time out, but I love Jordan Clarkson. Even at his price. Oh, okay, I was looking at the wrong player. 4.9 on DraftKings, 4.7 on FanDuel. He's probably going to be my highest owned player in general. It's a revenge spot against his old team, the Lakers. But all that stuff aside, it's just a good spot, man. When you do guy Danny Green and all these guys that can play some defense, the only real way you beat it is by shooting, and that's what Clarkson does. So Donovan Mitchell's price is way too low. I don't like a chalky Donovan Mitchell. I'm not saying he's going to be chalk because I think his position is loaded. But anytime Mitchell's been cheap enough to where I'm like, oh, I can't pass up on this, he's done me wrong. So it's a phenomenal situation for him. His price is real low. We know his usage rate is awesome. All that stuff checks out. But every time I've seen him and I've thought, oh, you know what, he looks underpriced, he has not done what I wanted him to do. The consistency, that's one thing with Donovan Mitchell that I have to give him a knock for. As good as he is, and I think he's great, and as a Knicks fan, I would love to have him on the Knicks, he's not the most consistent in terms of efficiency. But yeah, Clarkson's my favorite. I'm okay working in some Conley. I'm good with some Mitchell, but that's a loaded position. Gobert, like you said, they're going to need him for sure. Lakers are a big team. They like to play big. But Clarkson's my favorite play on the slate. I expect him to do dirties today. And if he doesn't, then I expect the Lakers to whip that ass because they're going to need some scoring. They're going to need some help, especially without, what's his cock? I don't know. Either way, there you go. Bogdanovich. Yeah, Bogdanovich. Without him there to check up those extra threes. That's going to do it for the game by games. We are at FanDuel lock already. So we got late swap for those of you who don't know. So hopefully, we already talked about that first game. You made your move. Now we're going to go through and answer some questions. So be ready to pivot if need be. Let me scroll up. I see a lot of comments. Shout out to a lot of you guys. Elliot says 6 games are the most this year. I think so. Our boy Moochie Mob Tai says, I love these 5 to 7 game slates. I agree. I love them. I hated those huge ones. I do like these. Moochie says, what Spurs point guard are you playing? Do you have a preference right now, knowing Forbes is out?
I'm not really into either. I guess it'd be DeJounte, but I'm more into DeMar DeRozan, Podol, and a little bit of Lonnie Walker.
Holla. William Crittup says, congratulations to me. I appreciate you, William. For those of you who don't know, I did post on Twitter, shared my gender reveal. I'm expecting a baby girl in January, my first child. So appreciate those of you who reached out. And if you want to see me awkwardly hit one of those exploding softball things, you can go check it out on my Twitter. Listen, I could swing a bat, all right? The wife was throwing high and inside. She was throwing high and tight. I caught it the first time. I didn't put that in the video. I caught it the first time, handed it back to her. And the second time I just adjusted and took a swing. So a couple people were criticizing my swing, bro. Talking about my swing. I'm like, bro, what do you expect? I'm backing up trying to smash this thing. But anyway. B Legendary 247. We'll address it. He says, agreed. What are some good contests on FanDuel? We will, obviously now FanDuel started, but we'll probably do a strategy session at some point for those subscribed to WiseTake.com where we can discuss those kind of things. And Be Legendary, I know you're a member at WiseTake.com. You can also hit us up in a Slack and we can go over a few things with you. But being as how the slate started, we'll save that for a strategy session video. We'll keep rolling here. Ja or CP3 on DraftKings from Tori J.
Ja.
I agree. Elliot was asking about Sumner, I think from the Pacers. Any interest in him?
Not really. Not a high usage guy when he does play, and there's just better stuff down there, and I find myself not really needing a ton of value because I was mostly in the balance range. I had a few lineups where I went up and got LeBron or AD, but this is more of the balanced build, and I didn't really need a ton of the crazy value.
And I agree. We got a question from our boy Joey Joe, aka Joey B, says, who's today's poor man's DeMar Carroll? Lonnie Walker.
Today's poor man's DeMar Carroll. No, Lonnie Walker's a dude. Probably Jay Crowder.
Yeah, there you go. The poor man's DeMar Carroll. David says, do we think OKC and Denver is a blowout?
No. Not at all.
I agree, man. And whenever you have two defensive teams in the slower pace, it's almost hard to have. One team has to be really inefficient. One team has to really, really have a bad day for there to be a blowout when you play slow and play defense. If CP3 scores 33 to 35 points on DraftKings, does he hit value? Do you remember what his price was? I'll pull him up.
I think it was 6.
Yeah, that's not enough. I mean, but that's not enough.
7.
Yeah,
7. No, he's got to go.
Yeah. We haven't projected for 36.83, and that's only 4.78x on DraftKings, which you would not be happy if that was the final result. Tim Mills says Brogdon's going to play, could be a slate breaker. Could be if he plays, but keep in mind that he hasn't played yet. He's had this neck injury he's dealing with. But if he does play, if Brogdon plays, and you believe that he's a full go, or we hear that there's no restriction, he could absolutely bully Ish Smith and Shabazz Napier. He's significantly bigger than them. Again, this is a guy that played forward in college. But that's a big if. We need to find out, number one, if he's even playing. And then number two, we got to make sure he's not on any limitation. But his price is ridiculously low. And we've seen nothing official on Brogdon's status. Oladipo is out, yes. Indy's hurt, okay. If price doesn't matter, this is from Landon Rhodes. If price doesn't matter, Tobias or Warren? If price doesn't matter, Tobias or Warren?
Warren.
Yeah, it's just a usage thing, man. There's guys out, so he's the one getting a boost. If price is not a thing. Let's see. Joey says, every time I hear the name Patty Mills, I think of a patty melt and get hungry. What do you say, Paulie?
Ditto.
Holla, little Joey Joe. Wig, longtime WiseTake Nation member. Wig, think we can fade this Laker game?
Yes.
Except for there you go. I was just gonna say, except for Clarkson. Yeah, I'm Kuzma too, but yeah, I agree. The main pieces, I'm not that into. It's really just those guys. Oh, and okay, and Wig says, or at least fade AD and LeBron.
Yeah, definitely. I think you definitely can fade those two.
Roddy says, congrats, CK. Much appreciated, Roddy. Good to see you, man. Good to see you around. Please hit the like button, guys, if you haven't already. Jake Elligood, hopefully I'm saying that right, says CJ, Sean Gilgeous-Alexander, DeMar DeRozan, or Butler on FanDuel.
Well, it's too late for Butler, so I'll take
yeah, either way of those three, I would say DeMar also. Lonzo or Ja Morant on FanDuel?
Give me Lonzo.
Yeah, I think, and to me, that's an ownership thing. Like, Ja Morant is phenomenal. His price is phenomenal. He's been playing phenomenally. But just for the sake of ownership, yeah. I'm tempted. I'm really tempted. I just think Lonzo, like, anytime you know a guy has 50, 60 point upside and you know they're going to be low owned, you just can't, you just looking at it and it's looking all pretty like. But for tournament purposes, I'd say Lonzo.
Lonzo is like 6'9".
Yeah, crazy cheap. I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. I appreciate those of you who, again, were rocking the early show. Make sure you're subscribed if you play baseball. Me and Paulie will be back at 6 p.m. Eastern for our MLBY stream, so make sure you're there for that. We'll be in throughout the Slack. Make sure you have the NBA injuries channel if you want on the Slack so you can keep updated when we get news on any NBA injuries. Comes in instantly. You could react, whatever it is. And all the content's up at WiseTake.com. DraftKings slate doesn't lock till 4, so you got plenty of time to go through it. We got cheat sheets up. Projections are up. We do update them throughout the day as we get news. They update automatically. And, of course, Paulie's article is up, his core plays, so make sure you go check it out. Paulie, anything in closing before we get up out of here?
Nope. Got to go back to work. I'll see you guys.
Paulie D for myself, the entire WiseTake Nation. As always, good luck.